So only 8 years after this series finished releasing in Japan, and 2 years after the official translation finished in English, I'm finally getting around to reviewing this series. Hooray for timely, relevant reviews! Well, a bunch of you requested it, and it is a pretty darn good series, so I guess better late than never. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present Spice and Wolf. Spice and Wolf is centered around three things: economics, food, and an ancient wolf goddess bickering with a 25-year-old traveling merchant. So yeah, it's pretty different from your average high fantasy story. It has the whole medieval world of valiant knights and magic thing in it, but none of that is important. Who needs epic clashes of arms when you can engage in currency speculation? What need have we for the trials of knights when there's the schemes of merchants to be had? And what need is there for spectacles of magic when there is tasty food to be described? Yeah, originality is definitely a selling point of this series. Anyways, the story runs thusly. Lawrence, our protagonist, is a 25-year-old traveling merchant who somehow already has a completely grey head of hair. In an effort to turn his grey hair white, a wolf goddess, Hollow, jumps in his wagon one night completely naked and asks Lawrence to take her back to her homeland in the north. Lawrence foolishly agrees, and we follow their travels as they gradually move north, searching for a homeland for Hollow and a profit for Lawrence. Pretty much all the main conflicts in this series revolve around the economics and politics of various trading schemes, and all the minor ones are from Lawrence trying to withhold food from Hollow. Either way, Lawrence gets in over his head most of the time, and he either gets Hollow to help bail him out, gives her food to appease her, or both. It manages to continue to stay entertaining throughout, as Lawrence seems to have a talent for finding towns in strife, and Hollow has a never-ending appetite. Without a doubt, the characters of Spice and Wolf are the biggest selling point of the series. Lawrence, the pragmatic, ambitious, and sometimes foolish merchant, and Hollow, the wise but also capricious and mischievous wise wolf, make a great pair, and the banter between them is a pleasure to listen to. Both of them grow quite a bit through the story as they gradually mold each other's personalities, but even at the start of the story they're well developed and quite likable. Actually, I'm pretty sure one of the main reasons this series is as popular as it is because of Hollow. She has this magnetic, strong-willed personality that you'd normally see with a tsundere character, but with none of the other silly traits that come with it. So, if you wanted a strong female character who manages anger without assaulting the protagonist, you've come to the right place. Actually, the series has a plethora of strong female characters, from the cynical merchant Eve, to the stubborn mercenary turned silversmith Fran, to the brave shepherd Nora, and it goes on. I mean, there are some male characters too, but none that are that memorable, other than Cole, an honest boy who joins Hollow and Lawrence as a, not actually, but may as well be, apprentice. So yeah, come for the cute girl with wolf ears, and stay for all the well-written characters. Well, I kind of preempted this section in the previous one, so let's talk about what I liked about the series other than the characters. Let's start with the fact that it makes economics interesting. I mean, some of the sections where Lawrence is in the midst of financial wrangling or trying to execute some crazy scheme are just as intense as battles from an action shonen series. The author does a really good job making sure that the stakes for these plans are high enough for us to be on pins and needles about the outcome. Watching Lawrence try to outthink his opponents has the same type of appeal as something like Death Note or Code Geass, albeit Lawrence is no evil genius, though Hollow could make a pretty good one. Now, after that intensity, in the quieter moments of the series, you are submersed in a world with beautiful environmental descriptions. The world of Spice and Wolf isn't really fantastical most of the time, but it nevertheless has this feeling of wonder to it. After finishing the series, I can still easily call to my mind many of the locations they visited with clear pictures in my mind's eye, as they stuck with me so well. Finally, the romance between Hollow and Lawrence is just so sweet and also kinda realistic. I don't ever think I quite thought about it before I read this, but most of the romances in anime and related media just feel so far separated from reality. And this didn't. Their interactions felt so true. like Lawrence gradually realizing that he'll never really win an argument with Hollow. The fights over food, the wonders of snuggling, her happiness bringing him happiness, and so on. That's what romance should be about, not the melodrama of multiple girls fighting over a single guy, poor communication, or princess saving. Just gradually coming to realize how important someone is to you. So I have a huge problem with Spice and Wolf's pacing. My first impulse would be to say that it's too slow paced, but honestly that's not really the problem. When any individual story arc gets going, it can be pretty intense, and at those points Spice and Wolf is a real page turner. The problem is, it takes way too long to build up to that point in any given story arc. After you finish one story arc, the interest curve drops right off, and there's a real slog to get to the next point where the story is exciting again. A large part of this is often just because it doesn't feel like any progress is being made. You don't really ever get a sense that Lawrence is any closer to being rich enough to open up his own shop, or Hollow is any closer to finding her homeland, and the romance between the pair has bright sparks but inevitably returns to steady state until right near the end of the series. Each of the individual stories are great, but there's a lack of connection between them to drive things forward. Also, there are entire volumes of side stories. 20% of this whole series is side stories, and that kills the story's forward momentum even more. Some of these develop the stories of side characters, which I can appreciate, but others just feel like the worst kind of filler. Most egregiously, they have side stories after the conclusion of the main story. The main story had a perfect ending. I was filled with this feeling of peace and content after reading it. I went on to read what followed, and I got a senile knight riding a sheep and trying to joust, which, while kind of amusing, also killed all the nice feelings I had around the end. I don't know what the author was thinking. He had the perfect ending. Why add all the random side stories after it? It was just such a waste. After I finished reading Spice and Wolf, I felt like there was a hole inside me. I had this feeling of emptiness, a sort of, what am I going to do now that this is done? So yeah, as with any series that brings me those sorts of feelings upon completion, I think Spice and Wolf is pretty great. I definitely wouldn't recommend it to everyone though. Its aforementioned issues with pacing are really trying, so if you want to get through this series, you absolutely need some patience. I think most people will love it if they make it all the way through, but that's a pretty big if. For those of you who have already finished the series and are looking for something similar, well, there is a sequel series called Wolf and Parchment that you could check out. Alternatively, you could also check out Violet Evergarden for the whole traveling stories and beautiful world component, or you could try out Maoyu Mao Yusha, which has the medieval fantasy world and economics. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the review. Thank you all for listening. Cheers!